What does the EC stand for?
Okay, at first it was East Carolina, because I was just in the region, East Carolina.
Because you live in Rocky Mount?
Well, thereabouts, yeah. And then it was East Coast, because I preached in Charlotte. And then, last year, in November, I preached in California and Oregon. So now it's just Extreme Christian.
Nice, Extreme Christian Street Preacher. Tell us about your early attempts at preaching. How long ago was it? And tell us about some of your missteps in your early attempts.
Okay. How much time do I have?
Oh, as long as you want. I've got, yeah, take your
Okay,
time.
well, my first preach was Memorial Day weekend. And it was at a strip club, in Rocky Mount. And I went out there and just started my camera, I mean, I made a plea for someone to go with me, but, you got to be willing to do it alone, because, a lot of people say, well, street preaching, maybe someday, let me seek God about it, that sort of thing. But, I mean, God was very clear to me, this is what you're supposed to do. So, yeah, I went out street preaching. I did make some rookie mistakes starting. Like
what?
I remember when I went to the abortion clinic in Raleigh, I forgot to bring my camera. I did use my phone, and I think I used the phone wrong or something. And, I never posted it because, the people would have to look like this the whole time to tell what was going on. But I remember that being like one of my really big missteps,
Yeah.
It's just, forgetting stuff. And in fact, I forgot stuff. I was going to bring my hoodie to wear that, and I forgot that. Forgot my belt, and these are new pants, but, let's hope that works out.
As a YouTube preacher, how do you measure your success?
If I can change one person's life, and if I do YouTube videos from here 30 years from now, if I change one person's life, then it's all worth it. That's my success. So
after you film something, tell us about your editing and publishing process. You you use a GoPro and a tripod here, and tell us how you get your video from creation to publication. Tell us about that process.
Okay, well, I keep my videos very raw, and I'm not being an artist or anything. It's just I'm not very techno, But what I do is I'll take the GoPro home, and sometimes I'll do like a little intro, film a little intro.
Up in your attic or upper room?
Yeah, I got an upper room. Okay, and so I'll plug that into my computer and download them, and then I got this one little app I use and just smushes them all together.
Which app is that? Is that
the Filmora video converter? And if I need to cut something, I can cut it using that. And then I'll just smush them together, and then load up YouTube and upload it from there. And I really try to keep as much interaction as I can. I mean, I only cut stuff out by necessity. But that's one thing I'm very passionate about, is making sure other people get heard too. I know some street preachers, they want to drown other people out when they're giving their opinion, and I just don't agree with that. I mean, this is America, freedom of speech. So I just sometimes I'll edit out. If I'm talking to a cop, the other day I had to cut something out because he's like, "Oh, you live here?" Yeah, that's got to go out.
Which active YouTube preachers do you? Oh no, I've got two. Which active YouTube preachers do you admire or try to emulate, or feel like are doing a good job? I know you're going down to meet Lonnie Mathern and Jimmy Miller down there in New Orleans this weekend. You're gonna be there for Mardi Gras? You're gonna try to get out to?
Yep, I'm there. The sober conference is going on during Mardi Gras, so we'll be in class, or whatever teachers are doing during the day, and then at night we'll be at Mardi Gras. I really admire Reuben Israel. although, I mean, I'm not like just like him, you know. I do have my Reuben moments, you know. When people get really rowdy, you know, I tend to give back what I'm receiving. But I really admire Jesse Morrell too. I mean, the way he can just get a crowd within minutes.
He's very good.
Yeah, I'm in awe of that. Because, you know, I'll be out somewhere and it might take me like an hour to get like one person to talk to me, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, you just stand there and you go, sin, 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 leaves to hell, hell, hell. That'll bring people pretty good. He's very good at drawing a crowd, yeah.
And, you know, I did do some preaching with the Oregon Jesus Name preacher last year. And we actually went to
the Portland guys?
He's not exactly a Portland guy. He's you know, because they're like really radical, you know.
They're aggressive, very aggressive. Yeah.
And he's kind of like soft-spoken. In fact, you know,
the Portland guys are hell-shaking. Is that right? The hell-shaking
preachers.
Yeah.
And you know, so they were hating me, but they were saying, "Oh, we like this guy over here talking to him." And he like apologized for it. He's like, "I'm sorry," you know. It's like, no, that's a good thing because you know I'm leaving in a day or two, and if they like you, you know, they'll keep coming to you and talking to you. But we went to Oregon State, and first time doing a campus preaching, I really like that.
Campus preaching, yeah.
Yeah, because we got a crowd out there pretty quick.
Yeah.
And I just really love interacting with people, you know.
All right. In your Super Bowl sermon, you talked about funding and how you didn't need it, but if you got it, you had plans. So tell us about what you would do if you were funded beyond your expectations, and sort of if you would. Have you used any sort of online tools to seek funding? Have you, like Patreon, have you looked into that at all, or any of those ideas?
Oh, GoFundMe and Patreon?
Yeah. And what would you do with it if it...
if I get more subscribers, I might do a Patreon, but I haven't really, you know, I mean, money's just not, it's just not important.
It's a distraction from, You
know, I mean, certainly, you know, you need money to do things, you know. I mean,
do you find it to be very expensive going out normally? Yes, you have a lot of signs. How much do you spend on signs?
Well, I mean, I make a pretty good salary, so I mean, I'm mostly self-funded. I mean, I have had a few people, you know, help me out here and there. But if I had like, you know, I don't know, somebody like Trump said, well, here's $1 billion, you know, I'd probably set up a church somewhere, and probably, you know, quit my job and homeschool my kids, because, I mean, I don't want to talk really bad about the school, but there was a program they did recently that I wasn't happy with, and people make mistakes. So I mean, you know, don't take this the wrong way if anybody from that school's watching, but I just wasn't very happy with it. But you know, you homeschool. I mean, you have control of what, and you know, everything your child is being taught, and to me that's very important. I mean, to me, I was never going to put a child in public school. I mean, besides, you know, things that they teach that I object to, they just don't teach. You know, on my job, you know, I come across kids, you know, and they're handing me envelopes that say, this person doesn't live here, and it says current resident. And I say, what does that say right there? They say, I don't know, I can't read. And they're like 8, 9, 10 years old. I'm like, why can't these kids read, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know about the public schools here, but I mean, in North Carolina, they're really bad. So yeah, I'd probably homeschool my kids, you know, put up a church somewhere, and if I got just a little bit of funding, I'd probably go to like a Wednesday night, you know, expository type service. But I mean, I can't, you know, I wouldn't need funding for that, you know, at least, because you know, right now I'm doing overtime, you know, and I'm like, to me that's not an important thing, you know. I just because you know, I can do the ministry without money, you know. It's just expanding it.
Right.
I would need money for that, so that's not really, you know, a big priority to me, you know.
Acts 2:24 says, all the believers were together and they had everything in common. Do you believe that the apostles were communists?
In that sense, yes, they were communists. And one point that a lot of people miss is that, and that has been a doctrine that's been presented, is that everybody needs to do this. You know, they need to get all of their possessions to the church, and then the church decides who gets what. But a lot of people don't read more into Acts, and you find out that Paul is actually getting donations for the believers in Jerusalem. So it didn't work. The communal system didn't work. You know, it was a complete failure. So Paul's got to, you know, go out and get money for them. So yeah.
Mormonism was very similar. They attempted a very communal kind of idea, and they attempted it about 3 times and it didn't work very well.
I do have an addition to that. In more recent time, and not very recent, but you know, when the first pilgrims come over here, they tried the communal system, and they almost starved to death. You know, the Indians had to help them, or you know, that would have been the end of them. But they changed and said, okay, we're going to give everybody a parcel of land, and what you make is what you have. We're not going to do communal. And they flourished. So, yeah, it's been proven by history to not be a good system at all.
Why do you think the apostles attempted it?
I don't know, to tell you the truth. I mean, it's good that they got together. It's good that they wanted, you know, to give more, you know, to the church and that sort of thing. I think it was a little misguided, you know, at that point, particularly at that point, because there were so few.
Yeah, very difficult, very utopian.
Yeah, but I mean, they learned from it, so, you know, it ended up being pretty good.
Paul said, he was headed from Jerusalem to Damascus with, who was he with? His companions, I suppose.
Yeah, there were some people with him.
Yeah, I don't think he names them. And he heard someone. How can we be sure that he was being contacted by Jesus and not the adversary? How can we be sure who he was listening to? Well, you can see a change, you know. I mean, to classify the entire experience, you know, the light comes down, and he hears a voice. He doesn't know who it is. You know, the voice has to, you know, identify itself. You know, it said, I'm Jesus who you're persecuting. You know. Why do we believe that voice?
I mean, there is kind of a knowing. I mean, that's one of those things that I don't think you can empirically state. You know, we know this because of this. You know, that's why the scripture says, you know, test the spirits. You know, if you think you're hearing from God,
what are those tests?
Well, what I usually do, you know, if I think I'm hearing something from God and there's some kind of doubt in there, I'm going to meditate on it, and I'm going to, you know, search the scriptures, and I will deliberately call out, you know, say, okay, you know, Jesus, is this from you? Because, and then you can stand on those promises, you know, where Jesus says, you know, my sheep know my voice. And but yeah, the devil is very tricky. He can, in my experience, he can sound just like God.
Yeah, I think there's a few scriptures that speak of that as well, angel of light and things like this.
Yeah, so yeah, you definitely have to test the spirits, as the scripture says. And I think once you see the change in Paul's life, you know that wasn't the devil. You know, because the devil would just say, well, you know, go back to persecuting Christians, because he was doing a lot of good work for the devil at that time, you know. I mean, you know, voting for people to die. He was, he guarded the clothes of Stephen while they stoned him to death. And he was even torturing Christians to make them blaspheme. You know.
Yeah, he was very, in early Acts, he was very prominent.
Yeah, the change was so dramatic that it took a while for the apostles to accept him. You know.
Yeah, he and Peter had quite.
And there was a huge backlash. You know, I mean, he didn't even make it out of Damascus. They had to lower him out of a basket.
Right.
Because they were trying to kill him. I mean, right from the get-go, you know, when he first started. I think anyone that has that kind of revelation, that kind of experience, I mean, you can tell if there's a definite change, you know. I mean, people say, you know, something's different about him, you know, now. I mean, if you had met me 5 years ago, you probably, you know, I'd be totally different than I am now. And I mean, if you told me, well, you know, 5 years from now, you know, you're not going to be, you know, watching TV shows, you're not going to be watching movies, you're not going to be playing video games, and, you know, you're going to be out street preaching, I'd say you're crazy.
Yeah.
There's no way. But, you know, I just had that experience, you know, 3 years ago when God just poured out His Spirit on me. I know I'm getting into my testimony now.
It's fine. No,
but yeah, He just poured out His Spirit on me, and it was such a beautiful experience. But at the same time, I saw, you know, how ugly my sin had become. And, you know, because it's not like I was an atheist then, but I wasn't being a very good Christian. I was backslidden, and I just saw how ugly, you know, everything was. But at the same time, you know, God I poured out His Spirit on me, and, you know, He could have been very justified in saying, well, you know, you just stay in your sin, you know. But, you know, when I had that kind of experience, I just said, you know, I said, God, whatever is getting between me and you, you know, I just got to keep having this, you know, this communion, this fellowship, this relationship with you. I said, whatever's between me and you, I said, just show it to me, and I'm going to get it out. And that's when, things started breaking off. So,
if the American money had the phrase Allahu Akbar on it, as well as the In God We Trust, Allahu Akbar, how would you feel about that?
Having it on the money?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a good one.
Thank you.
That's a very good one.
Thank you.
My personal opinion is I don't think we'd probably be here, you know, right now. If somehow that got changed.
Not changed. It has it as well. Both In God We Trust.
Both of them on there.
Yeah. Would you still participate in the American financial systems?
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think it might have an effect on the country. That probably wouldn't be great. But I mean, I definitely, you know, I definitely still use the money. Yeah. In fact, you know, when I preached to Muslims, you know, they gave me a Quran, you know, and I took it, you know, and I'm in the process of reading it, and you know, they specified, you know, we want you to take care of this. And I know some street preachers, they get a Quran, and the first thing they do is they tear it up and, you know, burn it or whatever. And, you know, I believe a man's got to be true to his word. So I said I'd take care of it, so I do. And I don't have any problem with Muslims at all. I do have a problem with Islam. That's why I go out and I speak to them, you know, because I care about Muslims. And I believe there are Muslims out there that are completely tolerant, they are completely peaceful, and they wouldn't, when they see what ISIS and, you know, these people are doing, they're just horrified by it. You know, I mean, if you saw my recent videos, I was criticizing, you know, that sermon that was given last year, where the guy was talking about a hadith that talks about, you know, killing Jews. And I, you know, confronted them about that. And they weren't very quick, but they did put out a statement that said, you know, we don't agree with that. This person, you know, he's not an imam. I'm not sure, but I don't think it was even done in a mosque. It was a taped sermon that was posted for a while and then taken off. But they were, the place where I preach at, they were quick to say, well, look, you know, we don't believe in this, you know, we've counseled him, and he's expressed regret that it was taken the way it was. So, yeah, I mean, that's just my feeling on the point, you know. Mm-hmm. And we are in a country where it's freedom of religion, you know. And I don't think it'd be a good idea if, you know, Christianity or Islam or anything was made a state religion, you know. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's, you know, and that's not what the founding fathers wanted.
I agree. In the letter to the Corinthians, it seems like Paul is talking about a previous letter he wrote to the Corinthians, and then at the end he says, or sometime in it, he says, take this letter to the Laodiceans and read it to them, and have them read the letter.
Is that Corinthians or Colossians?
Colossians, is it?
Yeah.
All right. But he talks about the, Colossians, Colossians 4:16, he talks about the Laodiceans, mm-hmm. and the letter he wrote to them. If we were to find something that claimed, or not claimed, but seemed to be zero Colossians or Corinthians or Laodicean, Paul's letter to the Laodiceans, how would we determine the authenticity of it? How would we determine whether or not it was inspired writing or not?
Well, if you found one manuscript, it would be very suspicious.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what we could expect from the Laodiceans, is that it didn't get as well distributed. So if we found a cache from around the right time, and it had a letter that seemed to be that, and then it didn't get out of obscurity, we wouldn't expect to see the manuscripts from the extra centuries from centuries past, like third or fourth, when the Bible was rather standardized. But how would we determine if it was? Like, not by number, for it was lost pretty early, but if we found a cache of very early Christian writings and there was a letter that seemed to be a letter to the Laodiceans, how could we tell?
Well, I mean, I think that it does go to them. We found over 5,000 manuscripts, mm-hmm. and that's the New Testament we have today. Mm-hmm. So if you did find this one that was not part of any of the other 5,000, mm-hmm. and if you switch to other languages, you got over 20,000. You know, if you go to like Latin and Greek, Latin, and you got over 20,000. Mm-hmm. And then you find this one manuscript. I mean, that makes it very suspicious. And I do believe, though, and it's a common belief, that what we have today is, it's God-inspired. And, I mean, there have been other writings that have been put forth, like the Gospel of Thomas, mm-hmm. which...
There's a gospel.
Very, very weird.
Yeah.
Very weird gospel.
They found a gospel of Judas recently
yeah.
in the things, and that's quite trippy as well. But the question sort of is about why do we believe that Revelation is inspired? Like what each of those books? How do we know that each of them is inspired writing? What is the idea that it's already in the Bible? Is that how we can tell? Or?
Well, the myth is that the Council of Nicaea got together and they said, well, we're going to do these characteristics, and that the books that are with these characteristics, we're going to say that's part of the canon, and the other ones we're just going to throw out. Mm-hmm. That's not exactly what really happened. Mm-hmm. The early fathers, when these manuscripts are going around, the early fathers would often debate upon themselves. Mm-hmm. Well, should we have this one in the canon? Mm-hmm. Should we have this one in the canon? So this was like leading up. Yeah. This was kind of leading up to the Council of Nicaea. So this was something that had been discussed for decades even.
Yeah.
Before the council got, and the council just put their stamp of approval on
Right.
it. Said, okay, this is the canon.
Because that was what was the Caesar who did that? What was
That's Constantine.
Constantine? Yeah, Constantine was influential in that, right? Because that was in Constantinople, right, or around there, the Council of Nicaea.
Yeah. So that's the mistaken idea today. It's like, well, we got this canon, but a bunch of guys got together one time and said, okay, we're going to make this a canon, this isn't. But this was actually being discussed, when those writings first began, and they started being, passed around, and, people were, asking themselves, well, how, should this be in the canon? Should we have this one? Should we teach from this one? That sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that discussion had been going on, and then, Nicaea just said, okay, well, yeah,
Right.
we've got it.
But it would be valuable, though, to hear what Paul had said to the Laodiceans. It seems like,
I'd be very interested.
Yeah.
If there was a manuscript found.
Yeah. What would you? Well, I mean, it is your turn if you'd like to ask a question.
I'd like to handle the slavery one, actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. When people think of slavery, they're thinking, okay, you own somebody. It's like what happened here.
Well, how about
which me
Old
was an
Testament?
abomination. Which me is an abomination in the sight of God.
Mm-hmm.
What happened here with the African Americans? I really don't do the race
The
thing.
cotton plantations.
Yeah, I
and
don't
things like that.
believe in race. Technically, the Bible doesn't teach that.
We're all from Africa.
Well, I believe we're all from Adam and Eve, but
Yes.
that's
We
another question.
all came off the boat. We all came off the ark.
Okay, so the slavery in the Old Testament was very different than the slavery that we had here in America before, because people were seen as property. They were mistreated, and there really wasn't a whole lot of penalties for mistreating them. In the Old Testament, how you got into slavery was you owed somebody some money, or you wanted them to loan you some money. So you say, well, okay, I'll work for you for this amount of time. It's more kind of like an indentured servitude.
There was that. That's
So we got, and so you would say, okay, well, I'll work for you, for this amount of time. But that slave did have the option of saying, when it was time, when their time was up, which was usually either the Sabbath or Jubilee.
the Jubilee.
Yeah. They could say, well, I want to stay here, and then
Right. All their ears.
Yeah.
Right.
Slaves in the Old Testament could own property. Like I say, in the Jubilee, they would get their property back. If you beat a slave in the Old Testament, you had to let them go. And then what I mentioned, as a loan, if you felt like they paid, and if they beat them and they left, then they lose their money.
Right.
So slaves were definitely treated better. Like I said, they weren't seen as property. It's more like like with the military. When the military offers the GI Bill, which I had the privilege of being able to have.
That's excellent.
Yeah, which was very, very good. When you're in college, I mean.
Did you find it to be, just as an aside, I've talked to, I have no military experience, but I generally find people to be sort of not happy with, a lot of the people I find have felt like the promises weren't kept. Do you feel like America has kept its promises to you?
To me, yes.
Yeah, that's excellent. I'm very glad about that.
Yeah. I didn't qualify for the loan repayment, so they didn't really pay for my schooling. But having that GI Bill come in. Yeah. Because when you're at college, you're broke.
Yep.
You're brokered and broke.
Yeah. Try having kids in college; it's even worse.
And that GI Bill was just that was so great to have that. But that's sort of like what the Old Testament slavery is like. So okay, we'll pay for your school. We'll pay you while you're in school, and in exchange you'll be in the military for this many years. You had to do a certain amount of years.
Right.
After that.
A tour? How is it called a tour? Or it's only a tour if you leave the country?
Yeah, tours were when you left the country, but
All right.
I don't remember exactly how long. I think it was at least. Well, I was in for a while. I was in for like 8 years, but
That's amazing.
I think it was like
That's cool. Stateside mostly.
at least a few sites. Yeah, I didn't. I volunteered to go to Somalia, but they didn't let me go, which I guess was God's protection.
Well,
because Somalia didn't turn out very well for us. So, yeah, I'm glad I didn't make.
That's
they
fine.
didn't take my offer on that
Yeah,
one.
well, your service is most appreciated. By the way.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Any other questions for me, or pretty good?
Yeah.
Cool.
Pretty good.
If you found yourself in a position where you knew that heaven wasn't an option for you anymore, let's say that in your previous life, before you really cleaned it up, you had done something that was unforgivable. Let's say that you had sinned against the Holy Spirit, or found that you had committed a murder that you think was unforgivable.
Okay, had to change the battery there, but
Yeah.
he was asking a question, so
Yeah,
we just
that's all
ask
right,
it
we can-
again. So.
Yeah. From what you were saying, you had a sort of road to Damascus moment, sort of reawakening to your faith. If after that moment you realized that there was no, from something that you had done before that moment, that there was no chance for heaven for you, that you are hellbound. That maybe there was a sin in your past that is irreconcilable, but you still have that Damascus moment. You still have this belief in deity and Jesus Christ, but no chance to get into heaven, no chance for redemption. How would you behave differently? Would you still behave as you do now, or what would you change? What would be different about your life than how you're living today?
Well, I mean, that's kind of it's kind of a weird question.
It is, because I mean, we're all redeemable. But if you looked back and said, well, back when I was a non-believer or a light believer, I've committed those 7 murders, and I really don't think that I am worthy of forgiveness. But I still do believe in the divinity of Christ and His power to forgive my family and those around me, and that other people are heaven bound, but not you specifically. There's no reward for you after this life. What would you change? Or what would you change? How would you be living differently from how you are now? Would there be a difference? I assume that there would not be a difference, because it's not the reward really that we're striving toward, but the reality of the gospel that we preach that motivates us. That's what I would expect. But would you expect much difference in how you would live if there was no reward for you in the afterlife?
Well, I think there is some kind of benefit to doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because God's warning against sin is not just I'm going to strike you down. I mean, it's like, sin is the problem. Sin is why, people are the way they are, I mean, if you do something bad like murdering somebody, I mean, you're going to end up in jail, and, there's all kinds of sins like I used to drink alcohol, and I was an alcoholic, so, of course there's a lot of problems with that. And, I think there is some kind of benefit to, living holy and living the right way. I mean, like I say, that's kind of a strange question.
But I believe you answered it. I believe your answer is that there is benefit to living a righteous life, even temporarily, even if there is no chance for heaven. There still is benefit to living how you are because of its temporal benefits. I think your answer is very good. I think it's kind of what I expected. Let's see. Anything else? How would you respond to the test of Abraham if you had a dream and God came to you in your dream and asked you to sacrifice your child to Him? How would you respond to that test?
That's always been an interesting subject, because people, and particularly when you see movies, where God tells Abraham, and Abraham's just like, oh, why do I have to do this? All these pagan gods do this. Why do I have to do this? But there's no scripture behind that. It says, God says, okay, sacrifice Isaac.
Yeah.
And
he woke up and he was on his way the next day.
On his way the next day.
Yeah.
So we're like, well, why, and that's why he's heralded as the father of faith, because he believed, after all those years, and then the promise comes, and then God tests him this way, and he passed the test, and people say, well, why did how could he do that? You get the answer in Hebrews, and I'm gonna try to look it up.
Sure. Yes, because I believe I would fail that test quite miserably.
I mean, I do believe he'll test us, but I don't think he'll test us beyond what we can bear.
And the Quran tells the story a little bit different. In the Quran, he asks his wife, he explains to his wife the dream he had, and she counsels him to follow. So I find that to be an interesting perspective.
Okay, Hebrews chapter 11. By faith Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Isaac, and he that had received the promises offered up his only begotten son, of whom it was said that in Isaac shall thy seed be called, accounting that God was able to raise him up even from the dead, from whence he also received him in a figure. So Abraham's thought then was, well, God's going to raise him from the dead.
That if he's asked me to do it,
if I kill him and I burn him up, God's just going to bring him back.
Would you have that much faith, do you think, or?
I'd like to say I had that much faith. I mean, I hope I don't get tested that way. I mean, I've faced some pretty rough tests lately, but yeah, I mean, you really have to. I mean, Jesus said, you got to be willing, to turn your back on, and this journey that I've taken to becoming a street preacher. I mean, there have been some casualties along the way, as far as there was a cousin that I was very close to. In fact, we roomed together a little bit in college, and we kept up, and I mean, he just totally cut me off and just says, you're stupid, and I can't believe you're doing this, and you're going to lose everything. Even though you've just been promoted, you're going to lose everything. I mean, I'm living the best life I can right now. But I lost him, and had a hairdresser that just went crazy when I said, I don't believe we're born sinners. Show me a scripture. Jesus said, hey, the kingdom of heaven belongs to these. You have to enter. And he said, let the children come to me. He didn't say, hey, keep those sinners away from me, So I believe, and even Paul said, children are holy. So, and she just went crazy about that. And I just said, okay, I guess I won't get my hair cut there anymore. Well, my wife cuts my hair now, so I get it done for free. But yeah, there have been casualties along the way. I mean, you got to expect that, though.
Yeah. Yeah, he did say he's going to, all families will be fighting about his doctrines. When there's 5 together, there will be 2 against 3 or 3 against 2. Well, I think that's very good. Extreme Christian street preacher. Thank you very much for this interview. It's been quite
wait
pleasant.
a minute. I got gifts for you.
Oh, sure.
I've got gifts.
Excellent.
First thing, this is a printout of legal rights of street preachers.
Oh, excellent.
I don't know if you've run into any problems with police.
Try not to. I generally try to listen to them, but I feel like I'm getting a bit more sort of grumpy.
But these will tell you what your rights are.
Excellent.
And the court cases.
Excellent. Wonderful. This is lovely. Thank you so very much.
We're having trouble in North Carolina right now.
Yeah.
Because they keep saying you have to have a permit, which you don't.
I've got.
And they're limiting, amplification.
Yeah, I saw that in Houston. Someone was doing a live thing, and they came up and said, "Please don't use the amplification." I don't use personally. I don't use amplification because I just don't have the extra hands for it. I use generally I have this here, so it picks up everything I want to hear, and the yelling is enough. But there is something that I found, but it's just sort of a local thing that says that I'm only not allowed to do it if there's like 40 or more people. I wrote it in here somewhere, I can't find it. Thank you, this is very good. This is very nice. I will look up many of these.
And I got you a book.
Excellent.
This is Leaving Mormonism. This is a book, sort of a compilation of different scholars, you know, and why they left Mormonism and sort of their testimonies about that.
Yeah, post-Mormons, we post-Mormons, they call us anti-Mormons, and I'm not anti-Mormon, I'm anti-Joseph Smith. But yeah, we have kind of a community online, and we are very sort of close, cross-pollination of ideas. This is great. Thank you so much. I didn't bring you anything. No, I didn't. But this has been quite a pleasure. Extreme Christian Street Preacher, thank you very much for coming to town. We very much appreciate you taking your time and
I had a great time,
and the expense to fly out of your way here. It's been quite wonderful. Thank you.
I came here kind of wanting to know, more about the Pastafarian religion.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and hopefully I've answered any questions that you have, and of course, if you, I'll be watching any videos if you want to sort of ask any more questions. I'd love to respond to any of those. It'd be wonderful, because I do believe that especially we who are sort of exercising our opinions on the street, that we're sort of in the same boat. I can definitely see that people not being interested in talking to me, but I really would like to speak to Jesse Morrell and Lonnie Bethune and all the people that are very Angela Cummings, you know her and all. I would love to speak with her, but yeah, just because this is a great American tradition. It's been going back for a long time. Christ spoke in the streets, and Jonah and Nineveh. It's a human desire to go out and condemn the sinner. But no, thank you very much for your time. It's quite pleasant, and hopefully you didn't find it too. Because yes, I'm definitely not here to yell. Invite people into traps or anything like that. But no, this is wonderful, and this is going to be a great video. Thanks so much.
Yeah, I like the fact that in this country, we can get together and talk about our faith with each other, and
right. I think
nobody gets beheaded after it.
Right.
I think that's great.
Right, and I think that is wonderful. And I think that the First Amendment does challenge us to do that, not to decide what our position is and then keep it to ourselves and ignore everybody else. I don't think that's what the First Amendment is trying to foster. I think it is trying to foster a public conversation about it, and I think the street's a great place to do it, because all these people around have got to sort of be aware that this is a conversation that's happening. This isn't a closed conversation. It's not just for the people who've dedicated their lives to it, but everyone's opinion is part of the conversation, and we can. And the things that divide us don't need to separate us. The things that the differences that we believe aren't there to motivate us to be in our own separate groups, but to cross-pollinate ideas. I think the First Amendment challenges us to do that.
And of course, I really respect people. They put down the Doritos, they get off the couch, and they go out and speak on the street.
It's very difficult. It's very scary.
Patrick Henry said, "I may not agree with what you say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it."
Yes. Yep.
I would step in if some police were hassling some Hebrew Israelites. I'd step in. Even though I don't agree with them.
Yeah. Yeah, and another thing is the exploration of where the line is, because a lot of people think the line's way back here, that we can't even that it isn't correct to get out in the street and that's sort of over the line, and it's not. The line is harassment, right? The line is physical abuse. And so I do like to yell in the street. I like to to yell, and when people say don't do that, why? What is the purpose of not doing it? That's how we got into this position of not understanding each other. Is certain things are not allowed.